back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and
George.
All right, welcome back. It is the unofficial 40 podcast right here at Soonerscoop.com, where it's been a long week of SEC Media Days, and the boys are back. The boys are back in town. George Stoya, Eddie Radosevich back here in the friendly confines of the conference room. We're in the old setup here because I'm tearing apart the control room, which I know has Eddie very worried, but Eddie, I swear to God, it's going to be okay.
It's like one of those. It's like
plug it back in.
It's like the old adage, or what is it, saying of like when the cat's away, the mice will play.
Oh, you played. Let me tell you, you two, especially you, George Stoya.
Look, I just was trying to
ruined Eddie and I's evening one night because he decided to bring a new microphone to the party.
Well, I think a little bit of it's my fault because I honestly, must have done something.
I know everything, and I can't put blame on anybody. I honestly can't.
The reason we did that was Eddie had some issues with the wireless mic, and so I was just like, well, I have an extra mic. Maybe we just try out 2 mics. And Eddie was like, okay. And so it was my idea, and then...
Well, we've done it before.
Yeah.
I know,
that's the thing. We've done it before.
Yeah. What we realized post, when Eddie was putting it together, that the audio was like...
All of George's was coming in the left. I was coming in the right. So I tried to even it out.
And it became a big pain in the ass. And
something happened, and it was only specific to phones. And iPhones, if you had one ear pod in, you couldn't hear anything. But if you had both in, you could. Androids, who the hell? George, congratulations on stirring up more shit on the YouTube comment section.
Well, if you have an Android...
I mean, calling people losers is a little strong.
Well,
even though you didn't include one of your bosses in that.
Yeah, Josh McQuestion.
So what did we learn, George, from this weekend? Approve things through Carrie before you put them in action, maybe?
It was just an idea. I was trying to help. I thought it would be good.
I appreciate the initiative. I really do. It's just... I left here at 12:30 in the morning. I mean, and it was great. Great hustle. Good job. I appreciate...
It was a great show.
Yeah, it was.
It was a great show.
For those on desktops and laptops and TVs and Rokus that watched it.
Those are our people. Those are our people.
So anyway, it was YouTube chaos. We apologize for that. You can shut up now, computer. See, I'm making audio problems. But yeah, it was a weird situation because it caused Eddie and I to lose our minds basically, and you know how I get.
I still have no idea what happened.
Yeah, I don't either.
All right.
It's fine.
It was a good show.
I'm just going to stop coming up with new ideas.
No
more new ideas.
You're allowed to come up with new ideas. Just maybe run them by me first.
Yeah.
How about that?
Well, I ran it by Eddie.
It wasn't even a new idea. It was just a different. We used 2 mics, and we've done it before. So I truly don't know what the problem is.
If I knew that you wanted to use 2 mics, I have another mic like Eddie's. I could have given it to you, and you wouldn't have had the silver and black thing, which also drove me crazy.
I think that's a very niche thing, though. I think you're the only person that noticed.
No.
But
the dorks did.
The dorks did.
100%,
I saw a couple comments. But
I'm not afraid to say the dorks.
What I meant is that I'll stop coming up with ideas of, let's try this new technology thing. I'll come up with the other ideas. That's not my thing.
I will say this. You are in the office. You are, I would deem you my number 1 favorite of being willing to try technology.
Yeah. I want to learn how to use the control room. I feel like I need to know how to...
You're way up on Eddie then all of a sudden.
I just need to know the basics. I just want to know the basics, I also need to learn how to use Eddie's camera every once in a while in case we want to have Eddie do an interview.
Yeah, that might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, we were going to maybe try and catch a couple people, but... The SEC Media Days it's just a
Can you not call it bullshit anymore, by the way?
No, it is bullshit.
No,
it's 100% bullshit.
It's not, but some of the people might make it bullshit.
What was the biggest story to come out?
That somebody, the very first question to Quentin, yours was about Arch Manning.
Yeah, I mean, come on. What are we even doing?
But Eddie, I do think
it's not bullshit to an extent of like I understand it's needed. It comes at a time of the year where it's like.
But here's my thing. Here's my boss statement to you. SEC Media Days is what you make it. If it's bullshit, that's your fault. because you didn't make it into something that was worthwhile.
I'm never going to try.
Here's what I would say though.
I'm never going to try to make it a big deal.
Bonus denied this month.
I think I'll take it.
Well, your mic stuff kind of ruined your chance of getting it.
Damn it. Oklahoma's day was worth it. The other 2 days,
Texas's day was
Texas's
from
day
afar, from sitting back here at home.
I thought it was worth it because of Jeff Lebby.
Lebby and Texas, I thought was worth it. Now today was horseshit.
Yes, today was not. And I would say the first day, I didn't need to be there. Like I tried to make it an effort to get down there because I thought we might get some new stuff from Sankey or something. And we just didn't. But I think it's worth it from the aspect one of like, I think it's interesting hearing from other people about how they think about Oklahoma. I also think it's interesting to just connect with the people down there. And,
that's always a good thing.
I
mean, SEC Mike probably wouldn't have been in our studios if not for being at media days last year in Nashville and meeting him face to face.
Here's the thing, though. I think that a bunch of it is bullshit, but like I walk away from SEC media days and just maybe media days in general. I think like 65 to 75% of the whole week, the whole event, is just the rubbing of elbows with other people, catching up with them, doing their shows, them coming on our shows, and getting everybody together for like a little bit of a
it's talking season. I mean, it is
before everything begins.
But I think our YouTube page, it best exemplifies this. Like, people want to hear us talk about OU. They want to hear other people talk about OU. It's not necessarily like the nuts and the bolts of, finding out the injury information is good. And we'll get more into that. People I saw losing their minds about Andrew Anthony, which we've been telling you for a while. Like, he had a setback in his rehab.
That shouldn't be a surprise, right? It was good to get an update on it.
Consumes every single piece of information we put out there.
None of the injury stuff should have been a surprise to anybody.
Though.
Yeah, none of that stuff's. But I think it was also valuable, like just seeing Brent, the way he interacted, the way some of the players, like seeing not so much Billy and Danny.
He's become much more polished.
Yeah, and even seeing Jackson, like listening to Jackson, and Jackson didn't really say anything of note, but just seeing how he like handled that big of a scrum, I think is somewhat interesting. Like I thought,
and you could see that it was a little big for him.
Yes, and so like
in 2 years from now, if he's still the starting quarterback and playing well, he's going to seem like a completely different. We went through that. I remember going through that with Adrian Peterson. He was terrified of doing media. By the time, like when he got to the NFL and he would come back for camps and stuff, you're like, I can't believe this is the same person. You have to learn how to deal with that stuff, and Jackson's doing it.
We talked to somebody that covers Texas. We were talking to him on Tuesday night, and he basically said that Jackson reminded him a lot of Quinn Ewers a year ago.
Yeah.
Kind of in that same stage of he's comfortable, but it's better from what it was, during the spring during the December month.
And I saw some of that talk of people from Texas were like, wow, Quinn Ewers has really gotten a lot better talking to the media.
Yeah, I think everybody gets it with age. You just got to be comfortable in front of that stuff. Danny's a pro at it these days.
Now, I will say,
I thought Billy was good.
I think like next year when it's in Atlanta, we probably don't need to be down there for 4 days or 3 days or whatever. But
there was a little bit of FOMO just not being there today, though.
There was,
to a certain extent.
Oh, I had it all week. I hated being here.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was good.
It was a great event.
I wish the access was a little better, just because, like, I was telling some people that, at Big 12 they basically just put the coaches up for 45 minutes and it's a scrum and you can just ask as many questions as you want if you're willing to speak up and ask them. This, we got, I think it was about 19 minutes with Brent before he went on the big stage, and it was just local beat reporters. And with Brent, like, you get that amount of time, he's only going to answer a handful of questions because he's long-winded. And I thought he was really good at the podium. He was quick and to the point.
I told George
he didn't have a Shane Beamer 17-minute filibuster.
No. I told George in the video that maybe some people didn't see. It's a weird takeaway from Tuesday with OU, but I thought he was like very head coach like for the first time in a while. Yeah, that maybe we had seen.
The most kind of, I don't know, regal's not the right word, but
he was
in control.
Confident and in control. Yeah, he didn't ramble a whole lot.
No.
He had a little bit of trouble, as Toby pointed out. He had a little bit of trouble like finding people in the crowd, but it was a big ballroom, whatever.
I will say this, this year compared to like last year in Nashville, it was very inside the SEC. Like, people were really diving deep to break down each individual team. This year, there was just too much low-hanging fruit, which was OU and Texas joining the league. And we all knew going in, like, oh God, we've been doing this for 3 years now. We went to Tennessee last year. Just to cover the fact that OU and Texas were coming into this league, and then we've had the celebrations in Austin and Norman, and Greg Sankey's been there, and Paul Feinbaum. You guys were on Paul Feinbaum's show. It's like it's all been talked about so much, and then you go to media days where it's like, okay, now the other 14 teams, we're going to get to find out more about them and talk about them. No, it was really just about OU and Texas joining the league.
Yeah, it felt like every coach's press conference that was asked, and part of it is Texas media love to ask about Texas.
Right.
That was my other takeaway. Is my gosh, they love
you mean other teams? They like to ask other people.
Yes, they like
about
to Texas. They're
Right.
like, well, what do you think about Texas? And it's just like,
Well, they're just they're serving their readers, or
I know,
viewers, or whatever.
It's just there's just a certain arrogance, I think, with Texas that I don't think is always there.
Here's the thing: Texas is on their best behavior right now. Like they haven't gotten settled in. The welcome mat has been rolled out. That arrogance is going to start showing eventually.
I think it showed this week a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, they can't hide it completely.
No, and I think that it just kind of goes with everything that comes with the brand of Texas. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people, you walk around SEC Media Days or you walk around Radio Row, and the talk or the buzz is not just can Texas fit into the SEC, it's can Texas go win a national championship this year? Which, I don't know. I think it's a little bit premature to just go ahead and say that they're going to be able to. And we had some conversations about this, George, just in terms of Texas. They do have to fill the shoes of 13 guys that are going to the NFL. They've lost a lot of talent. Now, not to say that they're not going to be able to, replace that. They recruited extremely well. But at the same time, I think that their warts get looked over a little bit when Oklahoma's get kind of put under the microscope and examined even more.
Well, people forget that they lost two of their best defensive linemen, and then they also lost their biggest target in the portal, and Dominic Williams, to Oklahoma, which forced them to go in and poach an already transfer to Oklahoma. I can't remember.
Lole.
Yeah. I mean, Texas is not a complete team. And the other thing is this. Texas basically won one big game last year. They lost the game to Oklahoma. They beat Alabama when Jalen Milroe was very young, and he got much better as the season went on. But then they lost to Washington. Their resume was not great. They were a playoff team, but
had to beat Kansas State in overtime in Austin with a backup quarterback.
That's the thing is people forget too. I told somebody this week in SEC Media Days. I was like, you realize OU did win that game in Dallas last year. And they had a chance to win by more than they did. I know they had to go on a great drive and pull it out at the end, but there was a moment there where it looked like they were going to win by 3 scores.
Pull away.
Yeah. So
and that was the inexperience of this Oklahoma program under Venables. It's just rebuilding, and they got up big. They had a chance to just seal it shut, and they didn't do it. But that's kind of the growth of this team, and a little bit of the Levy play calling that people were always upset about.
And it's also just funny because I have my own questions about Oklahoma heading into this season, but everyone this week was like, well, Jackson Arnold played terrible in the Alamo Bowl. And I'm like, man, let's think about the circumstances of that. One, yeah, he made a couple of really bad decisions, but that's going to happen when you're a true freshman in your first start. Also, let's not forget the ragtag team offensive line that he was playing with. We also forget that if Jalil Farouk holds on to the ball, they're going up 17 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And they most likely win that game. So, and we're talking about the season totally different.
Yeah, I think the narrative is much different if you're not walking out of the Alamo Bowl with the loss and the manner that they did, where you lose by 14 and, was it really 14? You could have gone up, as you said, by 17 to go into the fourth quarter.
George, let me ask you just about just in terms of the one-on-one with Brent Venables you talked about it before his press conference. Anything, other than, I know you're working on some Curtis Lofton stuff. Did he address a whole lot of that? And was it anything else? Did he talk much about NIL and the restructuring things outside of that? Because I don't remember seeing a whole lot of that.
Yeah, he was asked about that in the local media scrum and just kind of talked about all the stuff that we know, but just that how much it's changed over the last couple years and how they've tried to be very proactive and forward thinking. He talked a lot about the new partnership with Rosenberg from the Eagles, front office, and just kind of how much he's going to help them.
Here's my question too about that. Do we know, is that a Joe C hire or is that a Brent Venables hire? Is that a joint venture?
I think it's joint.
Okay.
But I think that
he spoke about it like he was very, I guess, like educated or schooled up on it.
Yeah, I think that Joe C spearheaded that, but Brent obviously approved it, and he's going to be, the hire is he's going to help with not just football, but I believe his consulting firm is going to help with all
other sports,
but he's definitely going to be involved in the football aspect of it and how they're going to kind of spend that money whenever that happens.
Did they? I mean, there was stuff going on, like bigger picture stuff with NCAA and court cases and stuff going around. I was kind of trying to keep up with that, but that stuff is still so unsettled. And I think when it comes to revenue sharing and what's being allowed, and look, we can talk to a blue in the face. I know people have talked about it on the message boards, but it is for OU to make that hire. It basically says that we know where we're going. We don't know when it's going to happen, but we're going to be prepared. So, like, when Michigan kind of took that first step out and they hired their GM and everybody took notice, and then OU eventually they tried to figure out what they were going to do, and that was a guy that Joe C was looking at that Michigan hired. Is like, it wasn't that the OU was slow to make their GM hire. They were just trying to get their structure together. This is kind of Joe C saying, yeah, we were on this track all along. To me, we're on this track all along, but now we're going to get ready for the next phase, which hasn't happened yet, but we're going to be there.
Yes, I think that I think you nailed it. I think too that they love Curtis in that role because he can talk to players. He's going to be very good about that. He can negotiate,
and families too.
Families,
when that time comes,
but like when it comes to the money and making sure that you're not overspending or you're making sure you're allocating the money the right way, you need to have somebody that's kind of a cap specialist, and that's what Rosenberg's consulting firm. I don't know if it's exactly going to be Rosenberg. I think he'll be somewhat involved, but he has a firm of people that will be kind of helping OU. That's where he'll be super helpful for Curtis, because Curtis is not going to, he understands the numbers and all that, but like you need somebody that is like very well versed in that area because it's super complicated. And especially when you don't know what it's going to look like in terms of salary cap and revenue sharing. I think that they've got the right person in that sense.
Okay, well let's get to kind of the reason that most people were there and the reason that most people are listening is you've got the season upcoming. You had media days. Was there anything that you learned? I think maybe Troy Everett's news that he's further ahead was the most positive thing from on the field development that I remember seeing. But outside of that, any talk from players? Billy Bowman, Danny Stutzman were there, Jackson Arnold. I mean, anything that you kind of gleaned out of just positives on the field heading into fall camp?
I mean, I think that you start with the defensive guys, right? Because I think that when you talk about Oklahoma in 2024, you kind of start on the defensive side of the ball, and I think it's all pretty obvious, but the experience that returns, I know that that's something that Danny talked about quite a bit. I spent a bunch of time with him during the breakout session. Just in terms of like overall confidence within the defense, there's so many guys that are returning that I think when you look at, historically and kind of what a lot of people have talked about with Brent and making that jump defensively from year 2 to year 3, there's a lot of guys that return. And I think that you look at all the guys and all the leadership. I know that Danny had talked about he's very comfortable leading all of basically the summer activities with the team. Mm-hmm. He's basically running the meetings right now with everybody inside. And, I think that it's kind of interesting to look at that because I don't know if we were there 2 years ago with Danny. I mean, I remember we had the same conversation talking about Danny and he needed to grow up. And I think that that's like when you saw him kind of almost become a little bit boring with us in the media scrums. And, I think he's starting to find himself a little bit more, definitely a little bit more, I don't know, like lax just in terms of being able to joke around, but also he kind of has that same vibe of he is very serious now.
Yeah.
He was ready for every question thrown his way.
Sure.
For sure. And
he kind of puts that, that he glosses over and he just starts answering questions. Like when I watched when you uploaded his breakout on Sooner Scoop editorial, I was like, oh, that's media Danny. Like you could just tell it. Like he talks a little faster.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of. He
definitely has like stock answers ready to roll for stuff that's going to get thrown at him. But at the same time, he does like still take the time to kind of cut up when he can see fit.
Yeah, I was impressed by Billy because Billy,
I was going to say that. I mean,
he's never been one that's been like a super great interview. I thought he was really good,
very comfortable.
Can I say this? Like just from afar, just watching all of his interviews. He did a really good job of projecting both confidence and also a little bit of attitude. Like,
I would say
he wasn't bulletin board type stuff.
No.
He was just like, look, we believe in ourselves. We think that we can win football games, and we're not here to apologize for anything.
I think he was a little cocky.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing, especially coming from someone who, again, is usually well-tempered, doesn't say a whole lot. And to kind of hear him get up there and basically be like, we think we're going to be great. We think that we have a chance to compete for the playoff, compete for the SEC championship. And, I think we all are kind of like, okay, everybody believes that. But when he says it and the way he says it, it was like, oh shit, like they really like.
I feel kind of like Jada was like back behind stage, just like getting him jacked up before his interviews. Like, because her confidence seems to run. Her confidence seems to kind of run through him now that, she's been so successful at OU.
Yeah. I wonder if I don't think he gets tired of the Jada questions, but he's definitely like, yeah, I know that she's been way more successful.
Yeah, I think that somebody asked him if he was trying to catch up with Jada in ring count, and is like, well,
she's got 4
doesn't
of
have
them.
4 years left. I think this is about it. He did say something though that like kind of like took me aback was just the fact that he's been at Oklahoma now for 4 years. He hasn't been to a college football playoff. Yeah. And I think that like there are a bunch of people, especially, and this might just be as a whole in all the teams that talked, you can this year, I think, kind of talk about getting to a college football playoff as a goal a little bit easier than just knowing that you have to be in the top 4 and that if you lose a game, you might be sort of out of it.
When was the last 4-year stretch that OU didn't win a conference title?
Ooh. Good question. I mean, I guess late 90s?
I'm pretty sure I don't know the answer. I'm pretty sure it's the 90s.
It would have had to have been. It would have had to have been like that 98, 97, or 90, yeah, like
90,
99.
Like 95, 96, 97, 98.
In the 90s, they went a decade.
Yeah. And that's not to say they're going to go win a conference title this year, but it's, I don't think anybody expects them to. But
I think it's a decent bet in Vegas, OU.
To win the conference?
No, just to make the playoff.
Oh, I would say so. I mean, I've been pretty bullish on OU. Like, I think they have a chance. I know the schedule is daunting.
It all depends on the offensive line and Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, sure. But it also depends, I think, a lot on just,
things got to break your way.
They got to break your way a little bit, but at the same time, you look at the schedule, and it was kind of the conversation that in every interview appearance that I did at SEC Media Day was like, you look at the schedule and it's just like, oh god damn, that thing is tough.
Well, and the thing is, like, there's been so much schedule talk this week. Like, I feel like I've just kind of browsed at schedules, but when you start really drilling it down and you look at Missouri's schedule and you look at Texas's schedule and you realize how it's not equal at all.
You and Florida are on completely different planets from what Texas,
Georgia's in there too,
Missouri. In what?
The scheduling. Georgia's schedule is freaking hard.
Yeah. Tennessee's isn't easy.
There's a lot of these teams too that, like, when you went into Big 12 or you came out of Big 12 media days, you kind of had a good idea about, I'm trying to think of a good example, like an Iowa State or a Kansas. You knew that they're decent, but if OU goes and plays well, you should get through that game, that kind of thing. With this, it's like, you can make an argument to me that every game on the schedule is going to be really, really tough.
Well, yeah.
Outside of like a South Carolina.
And that's my thing about Texas. It's like people are like, oh, Texas is SEC ready. They just made the playoff. Texas is historically underachieved when it comes to playing just regular rum-dums. Like, they've lost to Kansas. I know that was a long time ago, but twice. Before last year, I'm trying to think. like you said, they went to overtime or almost went to overtime with Kansas State.
I think
did go to overtime.
Or did go to overtime with Kansas State. Like, Texas's problem has not been that they don't have the athletes. It's been that they lose games that, conference champions don't lose.
It also, like, coming out of there, too, it was interesting, like, everybody's just assuming Texas is going to beat Michigan because Michigan has a new head coach. And I get it. Like, Michigan is not the same team that they were a year ago, but
New head coach, new quarterback.
I said this the other day.
That is a tough place to play.
I said this the other
year.
day. If they go into Michigan and it goes terribly wrong and they get beat badly, immediately the calls for Arch Manning are going to stop.
Oh yeah.
Start.
Oh yeah. I mean, I
from
think
that
Texas
point-
media know that too.
And then with Oklahoma and Georgia coming up, like their season can unravel before November even gets here.
But then you get through Georgia, and you realize the crazy thing after they play Georgia on October 19th, they will then go play their first SEC road game. They play 3 true road games in the SEC because OU's the home team in Dallas this year. They go to Nashville against Vanderbilt. They go to Fayetteville November 16th, and then obviously they end the year on November 30th in College Station. It's That's crazy to me.
Well, and I mean, look at Missouri's schedule. Have you really? They play 2 teams.
Yeah, Missouri's schedule's easy, and that's why, like when Georgia
They
was
play
doing
like UMass, and I mean, like
at UMass though,
Yeah.
which is weird.
At UMass,
but
right.
at the same time, I do think that George, we talked about it. I can't remember. Oh, when you were doing the ranking of the opponents, it's like Missouri on November 9th, there's a very good chance that if they just play halfway decent football and they're halfway as good as that people think that they could be, that's going to be a top 8 type team.
But if they go 10-2, they might not make the playoff because of their schedule. If they lose to Oklahoma and Georgia.
Missouri, I guess it depends on where that would put them in the grand scheme of things of the
just
SEC.
look at the rest of their schedule, though.
But
I mean, there's no strength there.
If Missouri goes 10-2, I think they get in the playoff.
I don't.
No questions asked.
It depends on what happens around them.
It depends on if they're like. I think the debate you're making. Let's say OU goes 9-3 with a win against Missouri, and Missouri goes at 10-2.
OU schedule is so much stronger.
I would agree.
Neil McCready asked me yesterday. I did a little podcast with him. How many teams do you guys think are going to get in from the SEC into the playoffs?
5.
4 at minimum.
Yeah.
He said that everybody that he had talked to said 3.
3? I don't buy that.
I said 4.
I think it's going to be 5.
5 is a lot.
I know, but there's I think Georgia's going to get in. I think Ole Miss is going to get in. I think Texas is going to get in. I think Alabama's going to get in. And then I think it's one of OU, Missouri, LSU are getting in.
Okay, so here's Missouri.
I don't think it's crazy. I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah.
Here's Missouri.
And it largely depends on what other conferences do.
It depends on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And Missouri's season is really going to depend on what A&M is doing. But they start out with Murray State, then Buffalo, then Boston College, then Vanderbilt. Then they go to College Station. Then they play.
That's their big. That's the big one.
I think they're going to lose A&M. I like A&M.
It depends on how much Elko can put together that team. I mean,
yeah,
I think A&M is going to be better than people think.
There's a lot of that was kind of like one
I tend to
of the.
believe that they could be the team that puts a wrench in everything.
I think they're the surprise team.
Yeah.
In the
that was
league.
like the sexy thing to say down in Dallas, but everybody was saying it was A&M should be
by
pretty
good. I mean like 8-4, 9-3.
Oh well, that's not. I mean, that's what they've been doing though, right?
I mean,
to a certain extent.
I think if they went 9-3 this year, that'd be pretty good first year for Mike Elko.
So Missouri plays
might get
Texas
into the
A&M in College
playoff.
Station. Then they go to UMass, 17,000 seat stadium. Then they get Auburn at home. Then they go to Alabama, not Georgia, to Alabama, welcome Oklahoma. Then they got finished with South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Arkansas.
That is so
Crazy.
easy.
It's crazy.
What would you pick OU in that schedule?
Like the SEC portion of it?
Just
Because I think we would both. Everybody agrees OU.
I mean, 10-2
run
at
the-
worst.
yeah, I
At
think
worst.
OU's going 10-2 with that schedule.
What's their toughest road game? Alabama.
Alabama, yeah.
Or I guess Alabama and or A&M.
How weird was that? How weird was Nick Saban's presence down in Dallas?
It was funny because, I mean, we didn't really get to see him a ton. I mean, he was on every show, and I could tell though he was starting to get a little annoyed.
Old man was getting a little worn out. He was getting a little cranky.
It was funny because one of the student reporters for OU Nightly, like went up and Nick had finished for the day or something, and he was like, "Hey Nick, you got a minute? Maybe tomorrow to talk to us?" And Nick's like, "Nope." Just kept walking, and then like whoever his like handler is, whoever his handler is, like he has like somebody that's kind of scheduling everything for him.
It's the bald guy that was always around him at Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah, he was like, he just said something like, "Hey, his schedule's full for the rest of the week or whatever." But it was like, I told that student, I don't remember his name, but I was like, "You've got some balls, man."
Yeah. And it's like, "Hey, man, you tried. Nice try.
Got to get it on the reel." You know who else had some balls as a student at OU in the journalism school? It was a man who he outed a prostitution ring, I believe, on this very campus corner. That was Mr. Eddie Radosevich, and he probably didn't have the vision that he has now when he did it. Imagine the prostitute ring he could come up with right now, because he has perfect vision.
That would be interesting. I would be able to see through anything that the government's trying to do. Enjoy Vision is the best laser vision center in Oklahoma City. It's not even close. The combination of mind-blowing technology, experienced eyeball surgeons, and exceptional patient care was life-changing for me. What my good friends at Enjoy are doing for the Unofficial 40 listener, they're giving $400 off of LASIK. All you got to do is go to enjoywithme.com. That is the letter NJOY withme.com, and use the promo code U40 if you're so inclined and interested in $400 off of LASIK. Fixing your vision, that'd be kind of cool. Enjoy Vision. This is where you LASIK.
How would Nate Fakin, the head of broadcast journalism, react to that report these days? If you
give me an A, I think. Give me an A. That was a award-winning enterprise.
What award?
Some OBA award. But I think it was for a satire news story. So either way.
So in other words, you didn't uncover really anything. You didn't save any lives or rescue any women out of human trafficking situations.
No, the women were my roommates, and they dressed up in drag.
I was getting ready to say, you had an adventurous life in college if you had female roommates.
No, I didn't.
By the way, the other thing that really struck me this week is Josh Heupel basically outing Barry Trammell as the head of the KKK.
Oh my God.
What happened? I missed that.
You missed that?
Yeah, I didn't even see it. What happened?
Well, Barry asked him a question, and he was just like, "Well, only you, Barry Trammell, the Grand Wizard of Oklahoma media."
Oh, he called him the Grand Wizard?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely
he meant to say the
Great Wizard.
I think Josh has lost a little bit of weight. He looks good.
He knows how to wear that gray suit.
He looked the exact same as he did in Destin.
Oh, he hasn't?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I thought maybe
he's maybe lost a little bit.
I thought maybe Josh got on the Ozempic.
No, he was good though.
I'm going to tell you what, George, you're the only person that makes me feel better about myself, because you are not a big man at all, but people comment on your physical appearance more than any of the rest of us.
I know.
Yeah,
it hurts
he's
me.
Standing next to fatties all the time.
Well, no, but they.
Yeah, you have the advantage of.
But the comments are
being
negative.
with fat
Eddie.
people.
They're not. They're the physical appearance. I think what Carrie's saying is they're not saying like, "Oh, George looks good." They're like, "Oh, George, that shirt's a little tight."
Sometimes they do. You just forget the negative. You forget the positive.
Yeah,
and you just
I need to
focus on
lose
the
a few
negative.
pounds. I know people.
I don't think that's true at all, but whatever. Anyway,
I thought Jeff Levy was good too.
No, I thought he was enjoyable to listen to.
He came up and shook my hand afterwards.
Yeah.
And then he gave Eddie a big bear hug.
It
was kind of like
good to see him.
That was a great introduction, by the way, by Greg Sankey about his kid.
Yeah, that was good. It was almost like
his kid is amazing. I love that kid.
Like the Key and Peele skit of Obama.
Yes.
Yeah, that was kind of like what it was.
But for white people.
But for whites. Yeah.
Like he shook my hand and said, "Nice to see you, George." And then he turns to Eddie and he goes, "What's up, buddy?" And gives him a big hug.
Was Zach up there with him?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We talked to Zach.
We talked to Zach for a second. It was good to see him. I think he's going to be. He said he's actually going to be coming back through Norman here in about a week. He said he has not been back in like a year and a half.
Wow.
I think him and apparently Joe C was there, which we didn't see.
I had no idea that Joe C was there on Tuesday.
But I think
they had a big Sooner Club thing later that day in Dallas.
They did.
Him and Selman were the only two ADs that I saw. I think
Scott Strickland was there from Florida.
Yes,
he was the tall, bald guy.
Which I think
probably
he was
not
there.
the best thing.
Maybe
that
he was
there
interviewing candidates. Yeah, for the next job.
No, I mean, I hope Jeff Levy has success, and if not just for him, for Zach Selman, because I mean, look, it wasn't always great. and the Art Briles thing wasn't great, but outside of that, there really wasn't a lot of issues with Jeff Lebby here.
No, I mean they were, all things considered, big picture, he had two really good offenses.
And he's a guy that we learned, is capable of, running a program.
Very much so.
The fact that he got off that jet with the NIL collective shirt on, like,
very
he gets it.
Yeah, and I mean, the work that he did, behind the scenes for Peyton Bowen and Jackson Arnold.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the starting point for the future of Oklahoma. I do think, like, one thing that I also was asked quite a bit was, like, and again, this is like when you get outside of the Oklahoma bubble, I completely get it. And I think the overtones of it will be even stronger if he has a really good season. But there are a lot of people within the SEC media that just don't understand the idea of Oklahoma basically saying, Dylan Gabriel, we love what you did here, but we're moving on to Jackson Arnold.
Look, I get it. It's confusing.
No, I get it for sure.
But and if Dylan Gabriel goes out and has a better year than Jackson Arnold, then OU's going to deserve some criticism. They just are.
It probably also, for the most part, it came to a head a lot too because now Dylan's the favorite to win the Heisman.
Right?
Year.
Yeah, co-favorite. I think. Yeah,
walked into a really good situation at Oregon.
And I do think, outside of Lebby, I'm going to be really interested to see, how Nico does, the quarterback at Tennessee with Josh Heupel as head coach.
If both of them
Heupel needs a good season. I mean, he's one bad season away from being on the hot seat.
Oh, I don't think that. They were fantastic.
Tennessee people are crazy.
They went 11-2 2 years ago.
I know.
You know what's crazy? Somebody pointed this out to me that all 16 teams in the SEC don't have a quarterback competition. I guess South Carolina maybe you could say, but they kind of know who their starter's going to be.
I think that's probably. That. That's 100% a product of
committing to people in the portal.
Transfer portal. Yeah. Who wouldn't want to go be the starting quarterback at whatever SEC program? Especially if you're coming from Michigan State, like a Peyton Thorne.
Well, let's face it, you're committing money to a player, and you're making a decision before he ever gets on campus that he's going to be your guy, because you're not going to bring in a guy and ask your donors to give him a bunch of money and then not start him. It's just the way it works now.
Yeah.
I think every team bring their quarterback too, other than Tennessee?
Right.
Ooh. Did Vanderbilt bring theirs?
Who cares? That's the other thing that we learned. Like,
everybody just kind of
pats.
By the way,
Vanderbilt on the head. I kind of feel bad for him.
There was plenty of first day watch everything thing with me, and when they had the Vanderbilt head coach on, he was basically a broken man.
Clark Lee.
Yeah.
Already. That's not good.
He's kind of resigned to the fact that they're just there to answer any questions and get out of there.
A&M's not taking Wegman, or they didn't take Wegman today. Kentucky didn't bring Brock Vandegrift.
So two teams that we weren't.
That was today.
When we were there, I felt like it was every team had their quarterback.
By the way, I got to ask you this because on television, I felt like it stood out. But is Jalen Milroe just like one of the most impressive looking human beings you've ever seen in person?
I don't know about
just
like impressive looking. I would say more like just talking, like listening to him talk. Like he's just a cool dude.
But for a quarterback, dude, like I don't know if he got
he's wearing a suit,
especially
so it's like
tight
hard.
or whatever. But
no, you can't. I don't know. I couldn't tell. Like he looked. There's a lot of guys that look like, oh yeah, that's a football player there. But I just enjoyed listening to him. I guess. I don't know. I wasn't like sizing them up really.
Oh, you're not doing your job.
Okay.
We have to know about the bulges around here. It's well established on this pod. We like talking men in their bulges.
I thought Quinn Ewers had a good look to him with the cowboy boots and cowboy hat. That was a good look.
A lot of playing up of the cowboy hat, which is very.
I think he was wearing it backwards at one point. I saw someone say
they were. It was definitely an SEC mandate that they were playing in. Like we're in Texas. We're gonna give these guys like all the
Longhorn cattle down here.
All the official photos and stuff were kind of like a Texas Western type like feel. It is what it is.
Put a rug in front. What are the hide rug or whatever?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a celebration of Texas, really. The state of Texas expanding into that territory. And that is a coup for the SEC. You've got Texas and Texas A&M now, and regardless of Baylor and TCU and Texas Tech, they've never run that state.
No, and I don't think that they ever will, to a certain extent. I mean, those are the two the main players in that state.
And the other thing I thought was kind of interesting is just, and maybe he's just got to play his cards close to the vest, but, Sankey basically coming out and saying, we're 16, we're going to be 16. And the stuff about Florida State, I mean, which wasn't a direct quote, but everyone took it as a shot at Florida State when someone said, I can't remember who it was, but maybe it was like an anonymous quote from Thamel or Dellinger, but about Florida State's been problematic in every league they've been in. Yeah,
I don't think they're going to be adding anybody. I really don't. I'm starting to get that feel.
That's the impression they gave off.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of reports out that Florida State and Clemson might end up in the Big 12, which is just nuts. Absolutely insane. Which, if that's what ends up happening.
If you have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars, to go to the Big 12, I'm not doing it.
I think that they're just that unhappy with the ACC and everything that's involved with that.
Well, what they know is since they're locked up through 2035, they're just progressively falling behind every team that's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, to make a media rights contract that long, stupid.
Yeah. They kind of put themselves in this spot. I don't really feel too bad for them.
All right. So anyway, look, by the way, we are going to have a second part of this podcast with Josh McQuistion. He had some family stuff going on, so we're going to catch up with him. And it'll be pretty seamless, but that's going to be coming up as well. Outside of fall camp, we got the
we are
Sooner signing day.
We're under 2 weeks
fan day
from Oklahoma being on the football field.
July 31st.
So
which is crazy.
July 30th. Now, that's when the fan day is?
No, the fan day is August 3rd.
Yeah.
July 31st is when I believe fall camp starts.
And I saw people on the board talking about, grab somebody's kid. It doesn't work that way anymore. You got to be a member of the One Oklahoma Collective.
They did that last year, right?
I believe that's when that started.
They did that.
So you've got to get at least that minimum package of $15, $15 or whatever that is.
You're basically paying $15 admission fee to get in.
Right.
I mean,
which goes to the players, so it's good.
If you really want to get autographs and all that kind of stuff, I think it's probably a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and if you're an autograph scalper, hawker, I don't know what's the term for that. You just get a bunch of different subscriptions to One Oklahoma and take in your different helmets and stuff.
I don't know how that works.
Question for you guys. This is a little off topic, but as we get into fall camp, I was thinking about this out loud with some folks this week. Did OU get better at every single position except for offensive line and possibly quarterback?
I don't know if you can say they got better at running back until we see Taylor Tatum.
Yeah. I guess it's better. What about is as good or better at every position except for the offensive line?
I think Deion Burks makes him better at receiver. I think
they're better at tight end. I think they're better on the defense. I think they're better on defense at every position.
Bauer Sharp?
Bauer Sharp, yes.
Jake Roberts?
Yeah, we
Mitchell?
haven't seen Jake Roberts. Yeah, I don't think Devon Mitchell's really going to be a factor this year.
No.
I don't think he makes them better.
On defense, though, I think they got better at every... I don't know.
Linebacker, they're better.
Defensive line, interior defensive tackle, I have some questions just because they don't have the experience, but I think they have more talent there.
You need a Jaden Jackson to step up for them to get better there.
It's kind of like what... he definitely wasn't saying it's a bad thing, but it's like you're getting better. A lot of these positions, you're getting better because the guys are coming back, but is that a good thing sometimes? And Brent was asking that out loud. And I think that this case, they are getting better because all those guys are coming back.
I think they're better at corner. They're better at safety. I think safety might be the biggest jump outside of linebacker.
I think they're better at edge.
Yeah.
Well, they would have been better even if R. Mason Thomas was just healthy.
Yep.
But
think about
Ethan
that.
Downs is solid.
Think about that. That's where I'm like, okay, you can win 9 games. Now, I also have no idea if the offensive line is going to be any good. And that's where I'm like, well, they might only win 6 games.
I know this. OU is... People that follow OU know that they're better than what the national narrative is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
And it's not bullshit. It's not homer talk. It's not like
we've
talked about it. And this roster was decimated when Lincoln Riley. Did you see that ridiculous? I mean, there are too many podcasts in the world, but did you see that USC podcast?
Yeah, it was great. I watched it like 3 times.
I need to watch the whole thing, but like it was a direct like assault on OU after Paul. Like Paul Feinbaum basically goaded them into doing a podcast about how OU was in shambles before Lincoln Riley took over.
It's also interesting to me, and like we talked about it to Toby Rowland about it. It's just like there's a lot of people that like if you just would have walked around and taken a poll, like what did OU do last year? What was their record last year?
What were the best team OU beat last year?
I think that like there was a lot of people that would tell you they went 8-4, 7-5. I don't know. It was just kind of strange. Like it feels like Oklahoma is definitely this little brother to Texas that's coming into the league that everybody thinks to a certain extent, like the SEC people that have been in it feel like they're just going to get run over every week.
Yeah. Like they're the team behind Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Missouri, and Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And then OU has a shot along with A&M.
And I think it's going to be rather interesting to see, I didn't end up voting. Did you?
I voted for the preseason team, and then also I did my 1 through 16 ranking.
Does that come out Friday?
Yep.
It will be interesting to see where they end up at.
I voted them 5th. I had Georgia 1, Alabama 2, Ole Miss 3, Texas 4, OU 5, LSU 6, Missouri 7. I think A&M 8, and then I can't remember after that.
You could talk me into anywhere in between 5 and 8.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's going to be a big difference in between.
If they finish 5th in the conference, that means they either went probably 9-3, I would think, or 10-2.
Yeah.
5th.
I mean, I
that's
think
the problem. If you finish 9-3 and Missouri finishes 10-2, they're going to be ahead of you.
I don't think. Here's my hot take.
Even if you beat them.
I don't think Missouri's going to win 10 games. Even with that schedule, I think they're not going to be as good as people think. People forget they won. I think it was 7 one-score games. They were 7-0 in one-score games last year. I think
they had to make the 57-yarder against.
They had to make the 57-yarder. Had to come back from like 21 down against Kentucky, who totally blew that game.
Sure.
Like they had like 4 games that you're like they could have easily lost those games if the other team just doesn't screw around, or if they don't have some great plays.
And with the expectations and the
the odds of one of these teams that everybody's really high on.
It's Ole Miss or Missouri is going to flop.
One of them's going to flop.
Yeah, or Texas could flop.
Is there a chance that one of the teams that we haven't talked about, like a Kentucky or an Auburn?
I don't think Auburn.
I think it's A&M.
It's A&M because
like one of those teams rising up the other way.
But see, and here's why I think it's A&M. I think they have the quarterback to do it. I don't think Auburn has the quarterback to just all of a sudden be that good.
Yeah, Peyton Thorne.
Like I think he's okay, and they could win 7 games maybe, but like I don't think that they have a chance. Kentucky could maybe be a surprise. Like if Vandergrift's as good as we think.
Kentucky's schedule: they got to play Georgia. That's at home. They play Ole Miss in Oxford. They play Florida in Gainesville, Auburn at home, Tennessee in Knoxville, Texas in Austin.
It's decently tough.
Yeah,
I think LSU is also one of those teams that is just right there where they're kind of in that same group.
Kentucky at Texas, I didn't realize they played. In Austin, that could be one of those games that you don't expect them to lose.
Kentucky's like kind of in the same vein as Auburn to me. I just know nothing about them.
But
like I have no idea what to expect.
You can count on is they're in every game.
Yeah,
like they're
because they play defense.
And
Mark Stoops is not Bob Stoops. He ball controls.
And now they have a guy at quarterback that I think can actually
make a big play.
That can make some plays and throw the ball around. That like I'm like okay, maybe they got a chance. I don't know who's their OC now.
Isn't it the?
Well, the guy went to go play
Liam Cohen
to Tampa, right?
Go back.
Yeah, he went to back. I think he went to Tampa to be Baker's OC.
He's the Bucs OC.
Oh, that's right.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's look, I could be totally wrong. Missouri go 12-0.
Hampden is Kentucky's.
Where's he from?
Offensive coordinator.
Where was he previously?
He was had success at Boise State. He was at Missouri and Boise State.
So yeah, I mean, I think that other than I think Alabama's going to be really good this year. I think Georgia's obviously probably the best team in the country. After those two, you could convince me 3 through 8 is kind of up for grabs.
I agree.
In my opinion.
I agree.
Was there? You talk about like Oklahoma's perception. Was there an overall perception that Alabama just won't be able to avoid some type of fall off without Saban?
You kind of find it. I found it like somewhere in between, because I think that there's a lot of people that it's like, yeah, Nick's gone, but that thing feels like it's so good and culturally, and they've recruited so well. And by the way, that Kalen DeBoer, everywhere he's gone, he's won football games. Well, I did think it was interesting what you had found out about like the difference in Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer. It sounds like is basically black and white. It's like the exact opposite.
Well, yeah, apparently he went a little extra early to go to SEC Media Days to do more media.
Yeah, he's supposedly, I don't know if he just likes it or if he just knows how to play the game, but supposedly he'll hang out for like an hour after media availability and just talk.
I was talking to some people that cover Alabama, and they said the access is unreal. Like, they've been going to like every practice, like talking to whoever they want.
Heard some of them say, kind of like we do, like it's sometimes a little too much. Like,
yeah, like do we have to go to that? Yeah, we probably need to be there.
My feeling on Alabama though is like they get a lot of guys back. Kalen DeBoer's won a lot of football games, and we saw Jalen Milroe was playing really good football at the end of last year. I think DeBoer is maybe the best thing that happens to him because
he can use him the right ways.
Well, yeah, like you saw what he did with Michael Penix last year. I'm like, if he could, like Jalen Milroe is more talented, I think, than Michael Penix in terms of raw talent. Like, if he can turn him into that, watch out. Alabama might be the best team in the country.
I would agree with you in just pure talent, but I don't know about arm talent. I mean,
I don't know. He's got a cannon, man.
Yeah, he does, but I don't know. The way that Penix threw the ball against Texas especially was just... Maybe that was an out-of-body experience, too.
He was he was hot.
He was unbelievable that night in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah. I just don't know. Like,
he also had great receivers.
I also don't know, like, Ryan 100%. Grubb didn't come with DeBoer. He was the offensive coordinator. Like, how much was DeBoer actually running all those questions. But I just think Alabama, like, is going to be really damn good.
Yeah.
Like, I think they're going to win 10 games pretty easily.
And Georgia's going to be extremely good as long as they don't
race their way.
Arrest. Yeah. It's just unbelievable.
I think it's interesting that the NIL collective is like withholding payments to those guys.
Yeah, they're fining them. They're fining them. That's insane. But I mean, I guess if that doesn't get your attention, like, just stop racing people.
Those Chargers are just they're made for NIL.
I've never understood that. Never understood
like
the street
half
race.
The cars in OU's parking lot are Chargers.
Yeah. They love
Challengers.
They love Challenger, whatever they are. They love those things.
We've seen Danny Pill out of here in his Charger, Challenger, whatever before.
Yeah.
I mean, you stay in this office, it's like a drag strip on ASP. I mean, Mustangs and Challengers.
The kids love the speed, I guess.
All right. Look, it's a very exciting time. I can tell by this podcast, I'm getting fired up because it's football and it's back and the doldrums are ending. It's 2 weeks away till things kick off, camp gets started.
I also think too, with this season, like, to me, as just a college football fan, it's just going to be a lot of fun because you have so many new matchups, not only in the SEC, but Big 12, Big 10, I think is going to be really interesting.
If you're not at the stadium, it's going to be really interesting watching national college football this year because of all the matchups.
Yeah. And I think even the 12-team playoff, it just adds a new wrinkle that's crazy. It definitely
adds a wrinkle in terms of you don't lose that one game and then it's like, oh, shit, we got to beat, we got to have this team lose, which, I think is going to have some good and bad because it did make some of those games really interesting when it's like, all right, if, this team in front of you in the polls, if they don't get beat, you're probably not going to pass them. It's going to be really interesting to see how all that kind of unfolds throughout the year. It's also going to be crazy. We talked to Andy about this. Like, if Georgia were to, like, if you miss the SEC championship game, if you're not playing in that, you're probably, like, if you're still one of those top teams in the country, like, say Georgia ends up losing a game, they get out of the SEC championship, how screwed is that team that's going to be the 11 seed going to be that's going to have to play the 6 seed of an SEC likely team at an SEC stadium in the first round of the playoffs? It's going to suck for them.
Don't beat 11 seed.
Yeah,
at some point, it is being a top 4 seed's got to still matter.
Yeah, and now it's top 5 because all 5 conference champions.
So Oregon State or Washington State?
I don't think that they're going to be playing.
They should just play each other 10 times.
They should literally let Big Cat coach them, like he's doing with Washington State right now.
Big Cat won. He's coaching with Coach Doug's, and he beat Oregon State and won the big Pac-12
the Air Force Bowl or something.
Yeah, but then he ended up winning the Armed Force Bowl.
7-6, good year.
Great year.
Have you played it, George?
No, I've been in Dallas working.
People are upset about the field goals.
I've heard that and the throwing. I'm in a scoop league, and we had to do a draft of like which team you're going to be in this dynasty league. And I had one of the last picks. I ended up with Air Force. So a little triple option.
So do you get to build them in Dynasty before you play other people? Is that how it works?
I've never played like an online Dynasty league like this. I kind of got pressured into it by the guys on the board. And so I don't really know how it works, but all I know is I'm playing with Air Force and I'm like an offensive coordinator. And I believe I can end up taking another job somewhere else eventually, but I'm starting at, you had to start at a program that was like a 1-star program, and I ended up
everybody did?
Everybody in the league starts at 1 star. And so I'm Air Force.
Tell them your idea about what you're going to have the cadets do with the planes.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm done with ideas. No more ideas.
No conspiracies right now. They'll get canceled. It's bad time. Be joking around.
The one thing I've learned working with Eddie is like, because I did bingo last week with him, and he gets up there and says all these jokes. Well, Eddie can't get canceled because everybody knows what he says is just like, he's just bullshitting around. If I go up there and I start saying, or I say on here some of the stuff Eddie says, I'm getting canceled immediately.
And you should be, because I think it's disgusting, some of the stuff that comes out of your mouth off mic.
Like what?
What you said.
Okay, don't pick at that thread. All right. Josh McCuistion joining us next. All right, well, as promised, here is Josh McCuistion, who has been in absence longer than I believe George Stoya. Can we at least put the George Stoya always on vacation on Josh now? I feel like we need to take some pressure off of George.
I don't think Josh was on vacation though.
No, he was in peril.
Yes. The worst part is I have been absent and now my vacation is coming up. Like, couldn't that have just happened while I was on? Like, it just sucks. Like, yeah, I will steal the mantle from George for the next few weeks.
Few weeks? My God, how much vacation are you taking?
This will be the only 2 weeks of vacation I've taken all year and probably have any chance of taking.
Eddie and I say, poor fucking baby. That's what we say.
Hey, because you guys don't do it as your choice. That's a you thing.
Okay. Anyway, Josh, do your job. Tell us what's going on with recruiting since you haven't for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, for everybody out there that has, that I'm sure has missed me, I really am sorry. But getting back to normal now, we got not running water, but we have electricity. There's water basically wherever you want to get it in Houston. Gasoline is flowing again. So, that's, as you said, no longer in peril. But yeah, so I think the most interesting thing right now for Oklahoma fans is obviously the Floyd Buchard situation. Big defensive lineman from Miami Central. A guy that,
which this seems to come out of the blue, I think, Josh, for a lot of people. Is it that way?
And I think that's fair because, he's a guy that when if you'd have said 2 months ago, Josh, kind of rank the likelihood of guys to end up in Oklahoma's class, he would have been a little lower on my list. Now, I know that's not the way Oklahoma felt about it, but I just kind of, talking to people, and, he's a guy that he is Canadian, but he currently plays at Miami Central that has largely been just a pipeline school to the University of Miami, and knowing Mario Cristobal and the work they do down there. He visited Alabama. There was a lot of buzz coming out of USC when he took that official visit, a little earlier in June. And so there was just kind of this Oklahoma's got a chance, but it seemed kind of long shot. But as it's come down the stretch over the last few weeks, it kind of feels, what we've seen happen to Oklahoma sometimes, where it looked like Oklahoma had the lead and then, some other schools kind of caught them. That's kind of what this feels like. It feels like Oklahoma has just stayed in there. They've been constant. Todd Bates, we know he really does a great job with relationships and making these guys feel at home. And on top of that, we know Oklahoma's been super competitive with NIL, especially for defensive linemen. They put a lot of focus there. And I think that's That's why I think Oklahoma's in really good shape as we head into Saturday in what kind of feels like maybe an Oklahoma-USC battle, which we haven't seen a lot of in the last couple of years, but that's kind of what this feels like. And with the way things have trended for USC over the last month, I mean, that's pretty good for Oklahoma.
This was something, too, that Floyd Boucard was one of the guys that visited during that big visit weekend, wasn't he, Josh?
Yes. Yeah. He was there. Let's see. I want to say he was there for the barbecue.
Right. Yes. I believe that's correct. But it seemed like that was a name that I remember we were doing one of the recruiting reports, maybe even the preview leading into that weekend, where it was like, yeah, he's visiting, but we'll see how that went. And then I remember afterwards, that seems like when that was the moment that this started to become a little bit more real.
Yeah, and actually, Eddie, I went back and looked. He was there on June 14th, so he was there the weekend before.
Okay.
But that is the weekend where you saw Marcus Harris kind of surprise everybody, show up, and then committed almost immediately. He was there with Trent Wilson, who I think has kind of sneakily been a good recruiter. Like, I've heard several people talk about just enjoying talking with him, and he's a guy that obviously, like Floyd Boucard, comes from an area nowhere near Oklahoma, and I think kind of, talked to Floyd and some other guys about, what made OU the choice for you, what made that kind of happen, so abruptly. And it's also the same weekend that OU, reeled in Cortez Mills. Now, that didn't happen for a few more weeks after that, but obviously that was a strong weekend. And if Oklahoma fans want to follow the pattern, and I know we'll talk about this guy a little later, Michael Fasusi was also there this weekend, and we've heard nothing but good things about Fasusi's feelings about that weekend. So I think Oklahoma sometimes I don't know, like you're the hot hand that particular weekend, and it seems like Oklahoma did a really nice job.
In terms of kind of, I guess, looking, and now it would be the third defensive lineman, if I'm remembering correctly, Trent Wilson and Kamori Moore. What kind of class are we talking about? Because obviously there was a lot of attention put on the 2024 class with David Stone and Jaden Jackson, Nigel Smith, that whole group of guys. For somebody like a Todd Bates to come back and do this again in 2025, it seems like this is another really good class that he's building.
Yeah, I think people will overlook it because it may not be quite as star-studded as the 2024 group. But Floyd Boucard is a high upside guy that I know really impressed some people when they saw him at various camp events. Now, again, this is a guy that grew up playing hockey. He's from Canada. There's not a lot of football background in his life. But to pick up the offers he has and to impress people the way he has, I think it says a lot about the upside that is there, the potential that's there, and you can see it on tape. He's a very explosive athlete, big physical guy, looks like the kind of guy that, you could go a couple ways with him. Like, does he kind of lean down a little bit, and he's a very active three technique, kind of in a Neville Gallimore type of sense, like that kind of body type? Or does he kind of, turn into like a 330-pound nose, kind of like a Grady Jarrett from, Brent Venables' past at Clemson? So I think there's a lot of ways. And obviously those are, NFL guys. So a lot of big comparisons made there. But I do think that's the kind, he has real upside. And then you throw in a guy like Trent Wilson that I think is a true three technique defensive tackle that I know they really like. They made him a focus. Really, really closed the deal on him as soon as they could. Then again, you talk about Kamori Moore, who is a guy that I think is a little more. He's going to need some time. I think he's got to change his body up a little bit. I think he's got to get a little bigger and stronger. But he's also a guy that I think there is some projection. It's a guy OU offered very early on, so he's clearly a kid they like.
That's the good news. And if we want to just kind of stay on the defensive side of the ball, I know that there's been a little bit of buzz with the and I'm not even going to try to butcher the kid's name, the last name, but there has been some predictions coming in for the Cade kid out of North Dakota for Nebraska. Is that surprising to you? Is that something that he was somebody that I think we had kind of waited to just officially announce? But what's kind of your read on that right now?
Yeah, for weeks now, guys, it's just felt like a countdown. Like, when is Oklahoma going to land this commitment? Like, when is that going to happen? And it just kind of kept not happening, and you weren't sure why. It's funny because I want to say, another guy I know we'll talk about is Christian Jones. And I talked about that like a week ago, I think, during the Hurricane pod. about just kind of being leery of this turning into a Grant Brick situation. Well, when you look at the parallels between Cade, I believe it's Pietschak is how you say his last name, but I could be butchering that, and I apologize to Cade if I am. But I think with this, you're getting kind of a deal where when he left Norman, I think everybody thought it was done. I think this seemed like just, like waiting for him to make an announcement. He could put out a tweet at any point, graphic, whatever. I'm almost sure he's got a graphic, maybe more than one. So I don't really know what the holdup is, but it's really interesting because a lot like Grant Bricks, and even more so than Grant Bricks, he doesn't really talk to many people. He's very quiet. He's not going to give you a great read on what he's doing. There's nobody around him that's talking. He is one of probably the most obscure recruitment I can remember. And this is a guy that, for On3 is a top 200 player in the country, the number 17 defensive lineman in the entire country. So he's kind of a mystery man. And I started hearing word this morning from Nebraska folks, like they're starting to think maybe something was cooking there. And you just wonder, is this a deal where Nebraska has convinced kind of an isolated small town kid, much closer to Lincoln than Norman, obviously, to, maybe make the move to Lincoln instead. And I don't know enough yet to be sure of anything, but it definitely feels like this has run out long enough to where you do start to think, okay, something doesn't smell right here.
What would a recruiting portion of this podcast be without talking offensive linemen? Andrew Babaloa has announced the top 4. Michael Fasusi has announced a commitment date, which is just over a month from now on August 21st. But the weekly check-in, Oklahoma obviously needs one of these two. 2 would be great.
Doesn't look like there's a whole lot of Babaloa movement on the recruiting prediction machine right now from Stanford.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where right now there's nothing new on Babalola, so nobody's going to change anything. I don't think it's so much like, oh yeah, we've confirmed we still feel good about Stanford. I think it's just there's no movement. It's kind of where it is, kind of no blood kind of deal. But what to me, the school that I've heard come up a little bit more recently has been Michigan. Like I talked about this, I think, on a recruiting port with Eddie and George a couple weeks ago, guys, where I was just saying Michigan almost felt like the middle ground. Like he can go to Oklahoma and have all that offensive line track record, and we know they're super competitive with NIL, and there's a lot Oklahoma could do for him. Or you can go to Stanford. There's going to be very little NIL, obviously incredible academic institution, and let's see what happens on the football field with with a staff that is just kind of getting its feet under itself. Or he could go to Michigan, fresh off a national title. It's not Stanford academically, but obviously it's outstanding. It's not Oklahoma as far as offensive line production, at least, not yet. Michigan's really starting to get that train rolling. But I think maybe that's a middle answer that kind of can serve both masters for Andrew, like he, both the academic side of what he wants to do and both the football side of what he wants to do. I think it can answer both questions for him a little bit.
And obviously, if you do expect some movement, it would be with Fasusi with the commitment date announced.
Yeah, obviously that's a huge one for Oklahoma. August 21st. That I had heard it would even be a little later than that. So, that's obviously good. Maybe if people want to track me, I may or may not be there at the announcement. You may read into that if you want to. We will see. I don't know the answer yet, so we'll kind of have to see what happens with Mike. But again, all I hear is that Texas is concerned. And for months, that was not the case. If Texas was worried about anybody, it was Texas A&M. And I don't think they were that worried. I think they really thought they kind of had their hooks in, and it was going to be Texas for him. As time has passed, the worry has definitely turned to Oklahoma, and I don't think Texas thinks they think they'd get him right now. I think that's a major concern. I've heard all sorts of rumors. I've heard talks of, Texas trying to get, rally some NIL stuff, like trying to, whether it's up the offer or shift how they're going to do some things. Like I won't claim that I know the particulars on all of that, but I have heard that the concern is real. Like that they know, talking to a few people, that the Oklahoma visit went exceptionally well. Like Oklahoma really hit it out of the park. I've said all along, I thought his family really, really liked Oklahoma, really had I think his parents and the way they've raised him and that kind of thing, I think there's a lot of connection with Bill Bedenbaugh. And I know OU fans, you don't want to hear all this. I get it. You've been burned. I understand. You're ready to get hurt again.
Oh, we're getting ready to talk about 2026 kids here in a minute that OU's doing great on. So get ready.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all coming. So I get it. At the same time, I think it's the best way I can say is when I was talking to George last week. Based on what I know, I feel really good about Oklahoma and Michael Fasusi. I feel as good as I have in months. I mean, probably back to the season. Like if I wanted to go that far back, based on what we've seen, I'm terrified for Oklahoma fans. Like I'm like, this is not going to happen again. Is it like, are they just going to get left at the altar one more time? And I mean, it's possible, but like no one knows. Like Mike's always been very outgoing with me, very forthcoming. We have lots of conversations. I haven't heard from him in a little while now, and that's very unusual. And I don't think I'm different than anybody else. Like I think he's kind of gone underground a little bit here.
All right. Anything else just 2025-ish that's hanging out there that we need to get to? I can't think of anything.
I mean, it's just so crazy that we're, on July 18th, and there really isn't, because there are not many spots to be had, and there's not a whole lot of guys that Oklahoma's really pushing for. I mean, is that correct, Josh?
Yeah, the only guy that I do want to mention is Christian Jones, the linebacker from Nebraska.
Yeah, from Omaha.
Yep. Again, another guy kind of like what I was talking about earlier with Floyd Boucard, where guys, there was a point in time I thought the official visit was going to get canceled. Like I didn't think he was going to take the trip because I thought he was going to visit Nebraska and commit. Like that was just kind of my impression. As time has gone on, talking to Nebraska people, they have that impression that I know OU fans can relate to, of kind of he's just looking for a reason not to go to Nebraska. Like that's kind of the vibe that I think is around Lincoln right now. It's like, it's just, we've seen this with other guys that OU's recruited through the years where Oklahoma's done everything they can. They've pushed the ball up the hill over and over and over again. And they never get to the top. And that's kind of what it feels like with Christian Jones in Nebraska right now. And I know from everything I've gathered, Oklahoma made a concerted decision to not take the Mark Iannaccio kid, the Jaden O'Neal's teammate at Narbonne in California. I think that was because they thought they were going to get Christian Jones. That is my impression. I think Christian Jones is probably going to – I don't think he set his announcement date. Again, a little fuzzy in the last week, so forgive me if it's been announced and I just missed the tweet. But to my knowledge, he has not set the date. I think it's going to be around the same time as Michael Fasusi, kind of late August. That's my expectation as of this moment. I have also heard he may be in Norman at the end of the month, like in about a week, for kind of that final little window before the season starts. If that's the case, I think Oklahoma's in really, really good shape. I want to confirm it with a few people, but again, that's not something I've even actually had a chance to report. That's something I kind of came across this afternoon. So I like where that is. You get Christian Jones, Floyd Boucard, you get one of these offensive linemen, and man, whatever else you do is kind of cake at that point. Like, I mean, they really need to get an edge. I feel like the edge class without Cade Pietchak is kind of dicey. But with that exception, I think it's a really solid class where you addressed a lot of your needs.
Okay, so a lot of people have been following things since football camps. Recognize the name and Noah Best, Midlothian, Texas, offensive lineman. And in your woke yesterday, in fact, I think people in following along, I don't know if you've done it yet. Did you enter a prediction in his commitment of 2026 kid? But obviously somebody that you feel like Oklahoma's made major strides with in the last month or so.
Yeah, he's a guy, and you guys will kind of chuckle at this, and for the people that didn't read woke, or I guess those that did, you already know this fact. This kid's from Owasso. So that Owasso offensive line that I've said so incredibly good, he should be on it. Like, that's where he was born. and moved to Midlothian, or I guess just to Texas in general, when about the time he started elementary school. So this is a guy with a lot of connections back to the state. He'll be back on campus again for the Sooners Under the Stars a week from today, actually on Thursday, July 25th. So that I don't think he's ready to make a decision. This isn't something where I put it in and said, "Oh, okay, I'm going to beat him before he can make the call." But I don't think it's that far off. If you told me, he takes a couple more visits, and kind of like a Marcus James situation where Marcus took a few visits late in the summer and then took a few more right at the beginning of the season, like went to Texas A&M, saw a couple other places he wanted to look at, and then kind of knew what he wanted to do. I could absolutely see Noah Best being that kind of guy. And, if that's the case, then you get to start, I don't want to say leaning on guys, but then you get to start telling guys, hey, Toa Katoa, hey, we've got so many spots. Obviously, we know Bill loves you. And I don't know if I've said this. I've talked to him. Like, he loved that little clip that we ran about Bill smiling. He thought that was the funniest thing.
It's a great clip.
Definitely had some conversations. Yeah. So, but yeah, there's a lot in 2026 that is, you've got Evenson Malaska at Bethany that I've got a prediction in. Caden Jones, who I've got a prediction for. Caden actually won't be at the Sooners Under the Stars event. He's going to be on a vacation with his family. So, no big deal. Not like he's choosing something over this. But again, you look at this list, guys, and I want to say there are already 5 or 6 top 100 guys that are going to be there for this event. And then, like I said, Christian Jones is a guy that I'm thinking may be at I guess, would it be is it the party at the Palace? I can't even keep all of them straight anymore. Like the next day for the upperclassmen, kind of the thing a couple of years ago when we saw Colton Vossick commit. Frankly, we saw David Hicks commit, but never obviously became public. We've seen a lot of things happen since on these weekends, and I think this could be Oklahoma's chance, maybe both in 2026 and 2025, to kind of to maybe pick up a commitment or two before the start of fall camp.
All right, and then one other young player you had was Windsor, Colorado offensive lineman Deacon Schmidt, who was a guy that
another one of the camper guys.
Yeah, another one of the camper guys.
Yeah, and this Deacon was a guy that came in and kind of long. I've thought about it, like trying to think of a good comparison for him, because he's not the 6'7" guy, but he's like 6'4.5", and he's about 280, but he's pretty long armed. Like, I can't come up with the perfect comparison for him. Kind of maybe, Kerry, to go way back, almost like a Frank Romero type of guy. Like bigger than that, way more. Frank was a tight end coming out of Moore, so different in a lot of ways, but kind of that same frame, I guess would be the way to say it. But regardless, a guy that Bill clearly likes is bringing back for this, the Under the Stars event. And guys, I mean, you look at this list of guys they've got coming in; it is pretty darn impressive. I mentioned Katoa; he'll be there. Obviously Jaden O'Neal, Jonathan Hatton, Ryder Mix, all 3 of their 2026 commitments will be there. Mason James, the wide receiver from Norman North, will be there. Guys, the offensive line group, it's basically the camp list. Like, Noah Best will be there. Katoa will be there. Felix Ojo will be there. Deacon Schmidt, Maxwell Robinson. But one of the ones that I do want to highlight that I think is really, really interesting is James Carrington from Bishop Gorman. This is a potential 5-star defensive lineman that is just a mutant-looking dude, like big, physical, clearly a guy that's just physically developed when he was like 12 years old. He's just big and muscly, like just kind of like a bigger Danny Okoye is a good comparison, where Danny just had muscles from the time he was like 13 years old. But that's this kind of guy. He's coming in. Obviously, nothing's going to happen. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, watch out for a commitment. That's not what's going to happen here. But it's Oklahoma's chance to lay the groundwork to get him back again, maybe for a game, maybe in the spring. I mean, he's from Las Vegas. He's not going to be in Norman every other weekend in all likelihood. But this is when you start to get a chance to maybe get into that top 5. And this time next year, we're talking about him, what he's doing and what his decision's going to look like.
All right.
Anything from? I know that we kind of sounded off on it with George earlier in the podcast. But
and by the way, give people the dates again of the Under the Stars and all that again, Josh.
Yeah, Under the Stars is going to be on June 25th. So next Thursday. And obviously we'll have some stuff leading up. I need to count. So 360. I've got about 20 guys confirmed for that right now. And then you'll have, like I said, what I believe. Can't remember all the names they've changed this through. I think it's still the Party at the Palace. No, I can't. Doesn't matter. My understanding is on June 27th they'll have an event that'd be a Saturday night for all the upper class guys. Like I said, probably Christian Jones. Probably going to bring all the commitment guys from the region in, and kind of do something that'll be a little bit of a different thing. Where I think Under the Stars is really going to be a big recruiting event, but it's also going to be very informational. This is your first big red carpet event for these guys, some of these younger players, where the guys a couple days later, they've been several times. Like I said, some of them are going to be commitments, some of them are just going to be around. So I think you're going to see a little more activity, a little more just like being one of the guys on that Saturday night event where they get to hang around the staff and the players, and probably, I'm sure the staff's families will be around. It's kind of a bigger, just getting to know you kind of vibe than the other.
Any observations, criticisms, concerns, thoughts, comments on any of the happenings in Dallas over the last couple of days from SEC Media Days from your viewpoint?
Including for Android users.
I do want to give a big shout out to our guy. I know Eddie was not feeling top shelf, toughed it out like a champion. Bob's family was apparently not feeling great. Like the Scoop offices had a little bit of a viral plague from what I've gathered. But guys toughed it out. But I have been really, I guess, surprised. Because it's not just us. Like we all, in our little chat, we were talking like, man, Brent was awesome. Brent did a great job. I'm hearing national guys, just national college football writers that I respect were like, man, he sounded really, really with it, really, had good answers for what we were talking about, was very, direct to the point, very confident, but not, to the point of, turning anybody off about it. I thought he hit the right notes. That was is I don't know if locked in or just good, however you want to say it. I thought that was as impressive as I've seen Brent Venables probably since that introductory press conference.
Yeah, 100%. I think that was one of the bigger takeaways that George and I had on Tuesday. Was just it sounds so stupid to say, but it was like oh, that's the head coach right there.
He's becoming the CEO.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
Very confident with his answers, and does that mean anything in the grand scheme of things? Who knows? I don't think so. But I did think it was a positive. I thought Jackson was pretty good in some of the instances that he was thrown into on Tuesday as well. And, Danny and Billy are kind of like the veterans around here. They've been doing it for 3 years now.
That's so crazy. And, guys, one of the interesting things is one of the guys that is coming into the Sooners Under the Stars is actually from the exact same high school as Danny in Florida. And he kind of, I was like, what do you know about OU? And he goes, I know Danny Stutzman played here. And I was like, yeah, like you're talking to the only guy that's been to Foundation Academy. I know where that school is. So it's just interesting to see OU going back there and like remembering covering Danny. And now he's the grizzled veteran senior. When I saw Danny play, I had to wear a mask at the game.
Yeah,
it's that. That's the era we're talking about. So it's just crazy how far and how fast it's come to, Danny's last run here, and obviously Billy as well.
And he had his wonderful trip to go see Mario Williams in Florida.
Yeah, that was right before COVID.
Yeah,
it was right, but it was like the week before everything happened. It was down at
because I saw
Under Armour event.
I saw Mario. Yeah, I saw Mario on the Thursday, and then I saw Danny on the Friday. And at least at Danny's, and largely because of Steve, I was allowed to move around. Like I could go where I wanted to go and walk through the sidelines and that kind of stuff. At Mario's game, I could not leave the end zones. I had to stay. I basically had to pick an end zone at the first half and then just stay there.
That was a lot of money spent on Mario Williams.
Yeah,
couple trips.
And then for him to reject an interview at the end of the game, that was great.
Very nice.
He'll be back. He'll be back in Norman. That was brought up. What was it? I guess at SEC Media Days on Tuesday.
Was it?
Yeah, he's down at Tulane.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Somebody asked Danny about it in the breakout
he's
section.
At Tulane now, huh?
Yep.
Did that just happen? Like after spring?
I don't remember
after
when.
Their season? I never caught wind of that. That's so bizarre.
Yeah, kind of strange.
Do they have a baseball team there?
Tulane?
Uh-huh.
They do. I don't know if he's still playing. I don't even know if he ever played at USC.
I don't think he did.
I mean, he went through the spring and did some stuff with OU there for, like a millisecond. And then it was like the football season started, and then he was gone. It might have been fall ball. It might have been some fall ball stuff that he went through.
That's insane.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Josh, I appreciate it. And enjoy the vacation. It is well-deserved. Even though we'll bitch about it.
We'll have Scoop tomorrow. I'm not gone for like another week. So I'm still here for about a week, and then we're gonna be kind of hit and miss for about 10 days.
Josh is hitting stage left, but right when that happens is when the football season kind of begins. I mean, for us at least, we're gonna have
Josh always kind of does that.
We're gonna have some local media day stuff, and then when Josh gets back, high school football will literally be on the field practicing. They'll be going through the start of the season down in Texas.
It's gonna be awesome.
I will say there is through the years I have developed a strategic timing of when to take trips, because that's like the best window like July to mid-August. And July used to be the window, but now everybody commits. So then I try to push it back as far as I can. And inevitably there's someone who, goes off right during my trips. And for those who are new listeners, OU seems to land commitments whenever I go on vacation. So you may have that to look forward to.
It is. I mean, I don't think we'll ever see another year like this, Eddie, where it's just been nonstop. I mean, there really hasn't been a break.
There has been, but there hasn't. But it's kind of been a good thing.
But it's the SEC move. I mean, we'll never go through something like that.
Oh,
again.
Sure. I asked Greg Sankey this morning. I was like, kind of happy. Like, this is all over now. Like, you don't have to worry about it. And he's like, yeah, it kind of feels like we got to the finish line a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, 3 years in the making.
Sure.
Everybody, they made a huge celebration over it. I mean, today, or at least Tuesday, was the finish line for OU. Wednesday was for Texas. Now everybody can stop asking all those stupid questions.
I was telling George, it's kind of a weird take, but it felt like the SEC Media Days, obviously, and we went to Nashville last year, but it just was kind of weird because we were in Dallas, and it did feel like you were kind of back at Big 12 Media Days in a way.
Well, you're at the Omni.
Like you're in comfortable settings. I think next year it will really hit me in Atlanta when you're kind of like embedded in the South.
Is that at the College Football Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Is that where they're having it?
Yeah, and I've heard that the setup a couple years ago when they had it there was not great. Like Radio Row was like in basically a different building, and so a lot of the reporters were saying they're hoping that their concerns were heard, and hopefully the SEC or everybody that puts it together will.
The Peach Bowl was a little bit of the media day was just everybody sitting at tables and stuff.
And that was at the College Football Hall of Fame. That was a little bit of a disaster.
Yeah. So we're here. I mean, it's here. It's crazy.
I was going to ask, Eddie, like, were you almost disappointed? Like, I talked to some OU fans that kind of went by the Omni just to see, the spectacle, and they were like, there's nobody here. Like, I think they were expecting like the Birmingham days when Nick Saban would roll in and that you just saw like Alabama fans like shaking his hand as he walked into the building, kind of stuff.
One huge
that didn't seem to be the vibe at all.
Yeah, there was a guy there, and honestly, I never went down to the lobby outside of like going and leaving.
Two flights of escalators. It's a really long.
Yeah, you got to go up quite a ways.
When you go to Hoover,
we were on the third floor.
Everybody walks in that one place where they established that is at Hoover. I can't remember the name of that hotel. It's changed over the years. But like everybody walked in the same entrance and went up the same elevator to go up to the ballrooms. Like at the Omni, it's just a massive, like there's several different entrances.
Yeah. And it's kind of weird because, as the Omni's a great hotel. Love staying there. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. It's kind of hard to get to. Like, you got to really you got to go do the Omni if you're going. You know what I mean?
You also have to be willing to pay like $40 to park unless you're Ubering over there.
Yeah, and it's not just the best location, but It was a fantastic setup. They did a good job with it. It was a really good media day.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Unofficial 40. We'll be back again next week. Plenty more to talk about, I'm sure, by then as things start to settle out from SEC Media Days. We get ready for I don't know what they're even calling it, Fan Appreciation Day, Autograph Day.
Yeah, I think that's just the basic name now.
And like we said earlier, you got to have that One Oklahoma subscription in order to go and get autographs if that is what you are into. So make sure you check that out at, is it One Oklahoma join1oklahoma.com, I believe?
I believe so, yeah.
Our friends over there. If not, just look it up. Google is your friend, as always. Anyway, thank you to Josh. Thanks to Eddie. Thanks to George. And we'll be back again next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com.